Welcome, FinTech Talkers, to another edition of the FinTech Talk Show. I'm your host, Patty. My guest today is Ram Palaniappan, founder and CEO of EarnIn. Second time in the show for Ram. EarnIn is a company that allows workers to access their pay instantly. Ram is joined for the first 15 or so minutes of the show by two of his pilot customers, Madeline and Mike, to the recently launched early pay product. Welcome back, Ram, to the FinTech Talk Show, and welcome, Madeline and Mike. Before we go on to our featured guest today, a huge thank you to our audience for making FinTech Talk one of the top-ranked FinTech and AI podcasts, recognized in the top 10% globally by Listen Notes, and as a leading FinTech podcast by FeedSpot. FinTech Talk dives deep into FinTech, artificial intelligence, crypto, and how these technologies are fundamentally reshaping our world. Join me as I interview the CEOs of unicorns, future unicorns, disruptors, and big thinkers driving innovation forward. Want to be featured on FinTech Talk? You or your client can join the conversation. Just visit fintechtalk.substack.com, click on About, and follow the link to schedule your spot.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great to have you all here. Yeah, it's great to have you all here. I have to say this. This is the first time for me to have a retail pilot customer, actually two of your customers with a startup CEO together on the FinTech Talk Show or together on a podcast recording. I think it's a testament to the trust and the shared vision business you're building at EarnIn, Ram, amplifying your customer voices. We talked about, when you came last time, we talked about EarnIn and your background. Can you briefly reintroduce yourself? Obviously, our guest is growing. So for those who joined, and also kind of a recap for the older audience, what led you to build EarnIn? And then we'll kind of go to Madeline and Mike as well.
Sure. I think the way EarnIn started is quite interesting. I didn't set out with the intent to start a company. I was working at another place, and out there I heard that some of my employees were running into overdrafts and payday loans. I was surprised because I thought we were paying everybody well. And so I spoke with one of them, and the problem that she had was she needed money the next day. Couldn't wait till the following Friday. It was already halfway through the week, and so I thought we should just pay her for the day she'd already worked. I couldn't make our payroll system pay her for the day she already worked. And rather than deal with that, I just gave her money for the day she already worked and said, we'll settle it when the payroll system finally runs. And I think this is something that happens in millions of small businesses. Lots of store owners do this for their employees. And so that's how it started. And I did it for a handful of my employees, completely in person in the office for about 4 years. And then I left the company. And the people who I was doing this for wanted to know if I would still do it for them. And I didn't mind doing this because these are people I'd seen in the office for years. So I continued doing it. And at that point, it was over Instant Messenger. And Instant Messenger was not the most convenient thing for me because I'd be trying to do other stuff and I'd be getting messages during the day. So I built a really simple web form. And then when I had this web page up, then people who I didn't know tried to use it. And I thought I should try to do it for them as well. And what I realized is that if you give someone access to the money that they've already earned when they need it, their life is much simpler. They're paying all their bills on time, no more late fees on bills, no more overdrafts, no more payday loans. And that's when I realized that if I didn't make this into a product, I always feel bad about myself. So that's how it started. And like now in hindsight, like having spent some time with this, it's sort of surprising because if you go back prior to the Industrial Revolution, payroll was actually run every day. People get paid at the end of the day's work. And somehow over time, we've automated this and made it into a batch process in a way that doesn't actually work that well for the employees, that they have to wait 2 weeks to get paid. And so I think we're really trying to use technology to get payroll to be more modern. And I'm really excited to have both Madeline and Michael out here. I think whenever you're trying to do something that is new and disruptive, there's always, I think, people who are afraid of change. And it's quite often because they don't understand how the disruptive new products actually help the average person. There's not that, they're not as connected to the average user, the average person. So I think it's great that Madeline and Mike are here to talk about how these new products actually help them manage their money better and to get to a better place financially.
Yeah. No, I'd love to get their insights on that, but want to just talk a little bit about that story you shared. That's very beautiful, Ram. kind of the personal connection. You wanted to help, that good side of you came out, and you helped out. And not just that, but you built a business and now funded by like some major investors, major VCs in the Silicon Valley, a very profitable and very well-to-do business, based on that kind of act that perhaps inspired you that this is a real need in the ecosystem, especially for certain segments of workers. Thank you for sharing that, Ram. Madeline and Mike, going to you, tell us a little bit about yourself and what got you interested in Ram and EarnIn and their products. And I understand you're a pilot user for one of their new offerings called Early Pay, and we'll talk on the backside about that. But start maybe with introduction. Who wants to go first? Shall we go Madeline first?
Sure. So I'm Madeline, and I was really excited when I found out about early pay. So getting paid 2 days early is just monumental. I mean, I can't even explain it. So prior to getting paid early, I'm paid biweekly. So it was really stressful because your bills are on all different dates. I was overwhelmed. I try to plan, try to budget the best that I possibly can. And it wasn't working. That's the bottom line. It wasn't working. I was too stressed out. I just felt overwhelmed. So ever since I got paid 2 days early, that stress has just gone away. And now I'm able to pay things over time. And in the past, prior to early pay, I had to turn down a lot of things. So friends would be asking if I wanted to, go out to eat or go see a show or whatever it is, a sporting event over the weekend. And I had to say no a lot just because I didn't know what I was going to have that was going to be left over. So now that I'm paid early, I have a lot more freedom and more control over my money. And it's just made a huge difference in my life. So I'm really grateful to EarnIn, and I think everybody should sign up and they should definitely get involved with early pay.
That's great. Thank you for sharing. And it's totally relatable for everyone to have cash on hand, so to speak. And have you seen, besides kind of having that cash on hand and not saying no to a few things, but have you seen, Madeline, that this also improves your productivity at work? And obviously the de-stress helps you with everything else. So talk a little bit about the other pluses potentially this has had in your life.
Oh yeah. So prior, to having early pay, the stress was just like out of control. When you're thinking about money all the time, it's really difficult. You're trying to balance your life, you're trying to do the best that you possibly can. But when you feel overwhelmed, it's hard to do other things. So now that I have early pay, my mind is just a lot clearer. And I think I'm much more aware of what's going on with my money. I think it's much better spent. And then the other thing is that I can use cash out if I need to as well. So, if I need those extra funds, I can do that as well with early pay, which is really important.
Gotcha. So a little bit of speed optionality. If you need it quickly, you can kind of cash out and get it immediately or something like that.
Exactly.
Cool. Over to you, Michael. That's a great story from Madeline. What about your side of the story?
Yeah, so I got introduced to EarnIn years ago through one of my roommates I was actually living with. I just needed some quick money, and he had told me about the EarnIn app because I was inquiring. I was going to go to get a cash advance, and those get it hefty. I know personally, if you ask for $100, they'll charge you like $35, which is outrageous. But he told me that the EarnIn app, you borrow what you need for the day, and it's based off of tips. So I was like, oh, that's awesome. So you tip what you think is fair, and it's a community-based app, and I thought that was cool. So I've used it for a few years, and then just recently they had early pay program, which popped up on my app one day, and I inquired about it, and also said that they would boost your cash out as well. So I thought that was a cool bonus just in case I ever need it, God forbid. So yeah, then I had coworkers telling me how they got paid early. I was like, oh, that's cool. And I was like, man, I wish I can get paid early. They're over here going out already, paying their bills early when I have to wait till Friday. I get paid bi-weekly every 2 weeks. So just the other day, Wednesday, I got paid already, So it's a blessing in disguise. There's been times I can count a couple times where my account was negative, unfortunately. And then I got paid that same night on a Wednesday, 2 days early. So that avoided overdraft fees just because of the EarnIn app. So just from personal experience, I've saved money right then and there just from the overdraft fees alone.
Wow. And I know you're piloting the early pay, which is a newer offering from EarnIn, but how long have you used the EarnIn app? Both of you.
Man, I want to stay for a good, maybe 4 years now.
Wow.
4
So
years?
you've
Yeah.
been used to it prior to this early pay. You've been
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Definitely. Yes.
And you, Madeline?
I actually lost track of time because it's been so long, but it's definitely been at least 8 years and I loved it. So at the time, I was kind of looking at different products and what was out there. And I saw that a lot of places were charging you money, different fees, especially monthly fees, or they were trying to make you switch your bank, or there was some type of interest involved. And I didn't want anything to do with that. So when I came across EarnIn and I saw that, there weren't these fees, there wasn't interest, it was optional to tip, I was like, sign me up. So it was immediate. And I started with that cash out feature, so if I needed anything extra, whether it was for groceries or whatever it was, I started initially there. And then eventually I got introduced to early pay and getting paid 2 days early. And recently, I actually started using the tip jar, which I really, really like. I am a big fan of it. I want to celebrate that too. So, because I get paid 2 days early, I kind of rewarded myself. So, I set up a jar. I want to go on a vacation. So, I realized I paid all my bills early. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to reward myself. And I put some money in the tip jar. And I was just so happy. I was so proud. Like, I felt like I wanted to throw a party or something. So, not only is there that early pay, getting paid 2 days early, but it will lead you to other things as well. And you can look at everything that EarnIn offers within the app, and it's just outstanding.
Wow. And we're talking, I don't know whether you follow in some of the macro debates, right? Taking off cell phones from high schools, meaning cell phone and the apps within them are impacting our behavior, students and adults, or young children and adults, in mostly negative ways. But Madeline, here you're saying is positively impacting it. It's making you save. It's making you more responsible. So that's incredible. What a concept.
Yeah, I think when I joined EarnIn, it makes you think so much more about your money. Where is my money going? What can I save for? What can I do? And that's what I'm thinking about all the time. So it makes you so much better with everything that you do. And you think about your decisions more. And I'm always excited to see, what is EarnIn going to bring? And once I heard about early pay, I was just like, I couldn't believe it. I never even realized that my employer was processing payroll on Wednesday. It never really occurred to me that was a possibility. And my mind is just still blown by that. And I'm like, why do we not get paid early? Why is that not a thing? But thanks to EarnIn, you can get paid the 2 days early. And it's just a life-changing difference.
Wow. Yeah, you're a big fan, I can tell. And I'm going to ask you, besides early pay, what do you want Ram team to kind of come up with next, right? You might have some good ideas. But before I ask you that, let me go to Michael. Michael, what advice would you give others? Obviously, this will be heard by a lot of folks like you who probably don't know EarnIn, or maybe have heard about the whole space of earned wage access, but don't know where to start. So what advice would you give to others considering working with EarnIn? Michael.
The best advice, I would say do it. I mean, the 2 day feature, getting paid early, is one of the best features. And on top of that, you could still keep your original bank. So that was another thing. I still have my original bank, and then I still get my money going through EarnIn and through my bank. So that's beneficial. Every day, as far as I know, I have a cash out option of $150 whenever I need it. God forbid, I know that's in my back pocket. If, I have an emergency, I need to get some groceries, you never know. And on top of that, I didn't even know about that jar option. I might start doing the jar option and start saving and putting money into that. I thought that's a cool feature I didn't even know about. So after this podcast, I'm actually gonna start looking into that right now, actually. So I thought that was cool. So
Madeline,
people, get on it.
it's Madeline, mission accomplished. You've influenced one person with your story already. So hopefully many more to follow. No, that's great. Michael, thanks for sharing that. So Madeline, while we have Ram here, and you've been with them for almost 8 years, I think, and are a big fan, what would you want Ram and team to come up with next?
Yeah, so for me, I view EarnIn as kind of the place that I go to. So I want to see everything there, everything accessible that I'm trying to do. So all my budgeting, all of my planning, everything that I do with my money, I just want to do everything through EarnIn. So right now it's kind of divided. I have to go to like one spot to see my tip jar. I've kind of used their different budgeting tools and things like that. I'm kind of hoping that there'll be like a way where I can kind of see everything like all at once. So having that visibility would be really important to me. Also, right now, you can cash out up to $150, but it would be nice if you could cash out more than that. So I don't know if that will ever happen, but it would be something that would be pretty cool. So those are some of the things that I think about, but I'm really happy with EarnIn and what I'm able to do.
Cool. Are you looking for a product management job, perhaps?
It's a good idea.
Because Ram and team would love to have you maybe as an outside consultant, because you are full of ideas. So you talked about a dashboard, kind of a unified view. I'm sure the team will take a look at it and maybe more advances or tweaking the amounts of advisors. Michael,
Yeah, you know what? Actually, now that I think about it, I actually would also want to see like if I'm falling behind in a certain area. Like maybe I have a goal, but I'm not meeting it, or like I'm not on schedule. If there was a way to highlight that and try to help me get back on track, I would also appreciate that as well. Because obviously, I'm trying my best. We're all trying our best, but well, things happen. So sometimes we need like that little push, to move us along.
Yeah. So in the banks and credit union space, right, I work in a little bit on that. They kind of call it financial literacy, financial education. You kind of summed it up kind of from your vantage point, all the stuff, right? Kind of making sure your debt is not out of control, for example, by what it should be, and not just give you the data, but kind of give you insights, right? And similarly, if you have a kid to send to college, kind of work that into the savings chart. So that's almost financial planning. So I'm sure all these could be encompassing in an app like EarnIn, or at least that's what you are saying. I think I hear you say that.
Yeah, and I also think about there was a time where I was driving to the office, I got to work, and then when I took my lunch break, I had a flat tire. And I was like, oh no. And it turned out to be bad enough that I needed a new tire. So that was a really large expense. And that's kind of how life goes. Things happen. You may have like those large expenses. So I kind of had to think about, well, what now? What do I do when this has happened and a big chunk of money is gone? And even if you save, those big expenses can hit you hard, and it kind of messes up, whatever future plans you had, and you're trying to shift things and adjust things. So I also think about in the future having something to assist with that. What happens if something does go wrong? How do you fix it?
Gotcha. No, very good. Michael, any I know both of you have to leave, and I'll get some time with Ram and ask him about some of these things. But any closing thoughts, Michael, before you hop off?
I thought she mentioned a good idea about the cash out getting bumped up. That was cool. But one thing, maybe I missed it. I've seen in other apps that they have options into investing. I could be wrong if they don't have that, but it'd be cool to see on the homepage some investing options. I don't know if they're going to start getting into the trades or some stocks, but maybe, instead of putting my whole paycheck into my Chase account or whatever, that maybe a little percentage of it can get put into investing, or maybe get put into my jar, my savings jar, instead of all of it just going straight to my bank account.
Yeah, it's all a spectrum, right? So you have your day-to-day expenses and advances and things like that, or unforeseen expenses. Then there's savings for the future. And then there's investments or planning for retirement or planning for kids' college. They're different financial products, but they're all solving your needs or a person's needs. And sometimes it's confusing. Oh, for that, I need a different product and work differently. But you're bringing a great customer perspective. And we have teenagers, and they work a little bit part-time here and there. And some of this is very applicable to them because they're not financially literate yet. I have to kind of coach them. And some of this thing is very interesting. So I know there's a whole fintech space in teen banking, but that might be a potential area for EarnIn to get into as well with the teenage partners. But I really enjoyed it. I would want you guys to maybe stay for another half an hour, but I do have some questions for Ram as well. Madeline, any closing thoughts before you hop off?
I know that, change is scary. A lot of people don't like change. They just kind of want to keep doing the same thing. But obviously, if you never try something new, you don't know what things could be like, or things could be so much better. So I just want people to have enough confidence and trust in EarnIn. Initially, I was kind of skeptical. I was like, is this going to work for me? But here I am. I've been using EarnIn for over 8 years. I mean, I'm very happy. And I just can't emphasize that enough. I really want people to download the app, look at the different features, see what's out there, sign up for early pay, get paid 2 days early, use that cash out, the tip jar, all the different features that EarnIn offers. Just download it, look into it, use it, and enjoy. I mean, that's the bottom line. Your life will be a million times better. I mean, I think about before EarnIn what my life was like versus now. It's just dramatically different. And even the person I am, it's completely different. So I'm just so happy with EarnIn and everything that they offer. So that's all I really have to say.
Wow. No, that's wonderful. And it is free, right? The app is
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, you have all these features and all these things, and other companies, they're charging a lot of times, like a monthly, rate or whatever to use it, or they want you to switch your bank or do different things, or I don't know, it's just too complicated. And EarnIn is not like that. It's very easy to sign up for early pay, simple to use it. The other features, the tip jar, I had never used it before until recently. I thought it was incredibly, easy to use. Same with cash out. Just try it, use it, and enjoy.
cool. So Ram, before Madeline and Mike hop off, anything you want to tell them or tell our audience about? I really enjoyed this, the chat with Madeline and Mike.
Yeah, it's always amazing to talk to customers. And thank you so much for joining the podcast with us.
You're welcome.
Thank you. You're welcome. It was a pleasure.
Thank you again, Madeline and Mike. And Ron, that was fascinating. Meaning, I think we went into why they like your product, and little bit we did some on the spot or on the fly product management, or what features they want to add. These are some great advocates for you. How do you kind of build this voice of the customer in your product? Looks like you do it very well. So I'm asking it more from learning, and for other founders perspective, how do you incorporate kind of the customer needs into your product?
I think we spend a lot of time actually speaking with customers. We have many forums in the company in which all of our employees can connect directly with customers. I actually sit next to customer support as well, so I can hear what kind of questions they're getting. That gives me a good sense of how the product is doing. When I travel, I try to meet up with customers wherever they are. And so I think we spend a lot of time as a company trying to get to hear directly from customers.
Gotcha. No, that's always good. Meaning sometimes we know what the customers want, but sometimes talking to them and kind of understanding them at different levels can help. We didn't get into kind of the definition of early pay. We kind of talked about how Madeline and Mike were pilot customers and it's a new offering. Do you want to set kind of the stage for our audience? What is early pay and how is it different from what you were already offering?
Yeah, sure. So the product that we already have is called Cash Out. And what Cash Out does, it solves this the bi-weekly pay cycle. And like you really shouldn't need to get paid every other week. And if you wanted to get paid for the days you already worked during the pay cycle, you have the Cash Out product. What early pay does, it solves the problem from when payroll runs to when the money hits your bank account. And quite often it takes 3 days, 4 days from when your employer runs payroll to when the money hits your bank account, which, if you think of it, is actually completely crazy because money is a digital product. I mean, just think of how much of your money do you use cash and how much of it is digital. You're getting your paycheck 100% electronic. It's getting direct deposit into your bank account. When you're spending money, you're spending it on your card, which is electronic. You're spending it through bill payment. You're really not using cash that much. And so money is a digital product, yet it takes 3 days to ship from your payroll system to your bank account. It shouldn't take that long. And so what we do with early pay is we take these really outdated rails that runs on ACH. We intercept that and then we switch it to more modern rails so that it shows up in the customer's bank account wherever they bank as soon as the ACH file is sent out. And there's versions of early pay that already exist with some banks, but you need to switch your banking relationship to those banks. And so with our new product, early pay, you can continue to bank wherever you're banking, but you can get your paycheck in that bank 2 days early.
Yeah. So it's almost like, just to use industry terms, so real-time payments, but you've kind of built that into the payroll,
Exactly.
right? And created value for your customers. But what about the economic side? So obviously RTP or real-time payments, you have to pay premium and things like that. So how do you manage that angle?
Yeah. So there is a fee to use the early pay product if you want the money to hit your bank account early. So if the money does get to your bank account early before payday, then we charge you a fee of $2.99 for the paycheck.
Gotcha. No, that's interesting. It's a kind of a good application, right? Because RTP, I've been in those discussions that it'll change the face of things, and mostly it's used in business to business payments rather than payroll. But payroll is sort of a business payment, a business to consumer payment. But this is a great example because it will have real benefits for the end consumer. So I'm glad to see an application of that, kind of taking the modernized rails to kind of implement real impact. Want to switch gears to kind of EarnIn as a company. I know Earned Wage Access, there are other folks who are doing it. Even some incumbents, I think, have launched their own version of Earned Wage Access. So obviously there's a need in the market. It is kind of well understood now that this is a need and people need to offer this as a service or a product. So what is the EarnIn's differentiator in this case, especially when your competitive landscape is expanding? Is it the technology? Is it the distribution? Or is it the trusted brand that you've built, like with Mike and Madeline type customer who are big advocates, like your NPS scores probably are really high. So which one is your differentiator? And you want to talk about each of them, like maybe all of them in some combination are a differentiator.
Yeah, I think one of the things that makes us different is actually that we've got this innovation mindset and that DNA to create new products. We created the first category on wage access several years ago. Now there's many more players. Early pay is a very new product. It's not one that exists previously, to be able to get your paycheck about 2 days early wherever you bank. And I think really the way we do that is we look at how things are working now, and then we also think through how they could work if you were to use today's technologies and what the impact would be on consumers if we actually move to a modern solution. Both of the things that we've worked on, you shouldn't have to wait 2 weeks to get paid. It shouldn't take 3 days for money to move from your employer to your own bank account. These are all really outdated ways in which the financial system works. And yesterday's solutions don't work for today's problems. And what we're trying to build is the solutions that we should have in our future.
Interesting. So innovation, the first mover point that you said, right? Or you have been first mover and you're always ahead of the pack in some ways. It reminds me, I think it was Steve Jobs, right? And in the modern world or in the current world, right? All banks or all enterprises have a chief innovation function, chief innovation officer role, and their role is to obviously innovate, and it becomes kind of watching what's happening with startups and things like that. So someone actually had famously asked Steve Jobs as to which is the innovation function at Apple. And he had, and I paraphrase, I don't know exactly, this is a little while ago, obviously. He said something that every group in Apple is responsible for innovation. There's not one innovation group or something like that. So it's in the DNA of Apple or something like that is what he meant. So in that context, I want to ask you, like, how? Like, because every executive, every CEO, every big enterprise CEO want that DNA in their company because they know it's important for survival, it's important for competitive advantage. So how do you do that at EarnIn? How do you have that first mover advantage?
I think someone who's like really cultural, and that we started off as an innovative company, creating a new product, and I think we've managed to keep that. We look for people who are curious. We really value people who try to do things differently. We like people who think from first principles. I don't think we should always accept the way things are. We should imagine how they could be different. And I think generally people at EarnIn, like we don't believe that the future happens to us. I think we all generally believe that the future happens because of us. And so we want to go and create the products that the world needs, not accept what we've already had previously. I think it's very clear for people that the outcomes that we're seeing outside are not the outcomes that we would like. We talk a lot about wanting more but needing more financial inclusion, needing more financial access. That's not going to come from having the same products. You actually need different products if you want different results. And I think you have people who are at EarnIn are very much problem solvers and builders who will look at the problem, and they're not the ones to complain about the problem, they're ones to try to solve the problem.
Yeah. Yeah. No, wise words. It reminds me again, I'm kind of thinking of older stuff, but Andy Grove, I think the big CEO at Intel, he said only the paranoid survive, right? To your point, right? People who are not just happy with the content with the status quo. You need to kind of embed it in the culture and encourage those people. And then I think Elon Musk kind of talks about, he's a great engineer of our time, first principles, right? He kind of attacks all problems at first principles. And it all boils down to culture. So great wisdom there, Ram, and for folks, for leaders, for executives who are looking at kind of creating that innovation DNA or innovative DNA in their companies, be it small, be it big. It's culture, it's attacking first principle, it's kind of having that paranoia or dissatisfaction with the status quo. And so those are important aspects to have that culture of innovation. No, great wisdom, Ram. We talked a little bit about this, kind of switching gears when Madeline and Mike were on, in terms of the future, what's in store for EarnIn, and there, if I contextualize it to some of the recent developments or Robinhood, I think this just happened like maybe at the time of recording, maybe a couple of days ago, recently launched a private bank. So almost targeting the big banks, right? So to the mass affluent, I think, or the Robinhood generation, I guess, the people who like app and don't like to go to branches. So they're offering, Robinhood is offering private bank services. Revolut, similar like a challenger bank in the UK mostly in Europe, they have gotten into wealth management again, maybe for the mass affluent. And there's some other Mercury, which is a small business bank, raised a big round of funding again. I think like last couple of days, it's a kind of a digital only app offering. It's almost, I call this app banks or challenger banks or branded challenger banks. So that seems to be the trend. And your segment's different, Ram, but looks like there's a play to kind of becoming, and I think Madeline articulated that really well, that she wants a bunch of these other things, kind of almost like the central financial life, the dashboard she was talking about, her savings and I think Mike talked about it, kind of more the investment angle. So these are some great ideas, but I want to hear from you as to where do you see EarnIn, and maybe whatever you can talk about in terms of your future plans. Where do you see EarnIn go from here?
Yeah, I think both Mike and Madeline had some great ideas. And like you said, like Robinhood has been doing a fantastic job at launching a number of new products very quickly. Revolut also does really well at launching many new products. I think where we see ourselves is in helping people manage their cash flow. And it's different from a bank. I think we're very much involved with the movement of money, how you receive it and how you try to spend it optimally. And so that's sort of where we play. We're really excited about this new product, Early Pay, where it helps you get your paycheck much faster. And we're working on more things that are all along the lines of better cash flow management.
Gotcha. And any plans to target other segments besides the target segment that you have a good traction with?
I think it's actually a pretty wide segment where most people are moving money
Fair
and are
enough.
trying to manage their cash flow.
Fair enough.
As we build more of these products out, I hope more people will find at least a part of it appealing to them.
Yeah, no, fair enough. And I selfishly, because I have teens and I was talking about that, I can see kind of a teen earning a potential attractive offering. They have certain different needs, but it might be something to look into.
Yeah.
Cool. So again, switching maybe some gears, and not to get political. I mean, that's not the intent, but kind of because we kind of live in that environment. But Trump 2.0, doing a lot of things, but how I see it, at least, it's philosophically different than, say, the previous administration in terms of the regulatory burden. Especially around financial services. They've already announced a bunch of things around stable coins and that kind of stuff. And the people who are responsible for some of the regulatory agencies. Any kind of thoughts on how this will shape out, especially in the context that you are, or in the context you are operating in?
Yeah, I think we continue to be focused on get to a better place financially. So that doesn't really change. Quite often, innovation is ahead of regulation. And hopefully, there will be a chance to have more conversations and opportunity to show how customers are impacted, and that the customer voice could be more upfront and center, the voice of the person who's working. Hopefully, that'll be heard more. And hopefully, we're entering an environment where there's more openness to new solutions, particularly when the solution's helping the consumer. You did mention a little bit about crypto and stablecoins. It's not an area where we play, but I think it's just fascinating to look back at what's been happening on the crypto blockchain area. If you just look back over the last 4 or 8 years,
Right.
Obviously there's been a lot of price appreciation on things like Bitcoin. And when you think about the American dream, it was probably like the surest way to get the American dream was actually to have bought Bitcoin 4 years or 6 years ago. And so in hindsight, it's really amazing, or like it's crazy to think of it that there's been a lot of like external forces fighting consumers from like putting fear in consumers of Bitcoin, while that was the surest way to get the American dream.
Mm.
Like when you look at it in hindsight, it's crazy. Like, why were you making people afraid of the American dream? I think it's because it was a moment of change, and then there's people who were afraid of change, and they spread fear about the change, and lots of people missed out on it because of that.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting way to look at it. I didn't think about it that way, but definitely, meaning on the stablecoin front, I almost see it as another pipe, so to speak,
Yeah.
right? So it's real-time payments and stablecoins, maybe real-time settlement and that kind of stuff. And I almost see that all banks will start maybe just like you have checking routing numbers, everyone will have their own stablecoins eventually, maybe in short
Yeah.
order.
Hmm.
But your American dream and Bitcoin and kind of an alt wealth and inflation protected wealth, um, or more speculative kind of options. That's an interesting angle, yeah. And a lot of people do say that crypto and Bitcoin kind of democratize some of these things, kind of access to wealth or access to speculative investments in some ways. So no, it's interesting and how what would be maybe the next wave, right? With AI and things like that, what could be the next wave? That's an
Hmm.
interesting thought. Yeah. And any predictions? I know I think you were in Vegas for some of the conferences in fintech, and there was an AI conference there too. So I got a glimpse of what people were talking about, a lot of agents and agentic AI or agentic everything. It'll kind of impact software delivery or SaaS, like software as a service, might become more all agents, which will dramatically impact the whole software market. Have you given it much thought? I know you don't play actively in that AI space, but how will AI impact our current state?
Um, I don't know if I have a great answer. I think it's clear that great inflection. Um, and the nature of the change is such that it's probably likely to be underestimated instead of overestimating the change. I mean, in some ways, this is really similar to the printing press. When the printing press came, there was so much of like preservation of knowledge and like being able to transfer knowledge, and people got exposed to what other people had written. But the printing press itself was useful because people had been writing books previously. It just wasn't being shared as widely. And now we've had the internet up for 20 years, maybe more. There's been a lot of content online. And suddenly you have these LLMs that can actually do so much with all the content that we've spent years preparing that you might actually have another printing press moment.
That's very profound. If you think about internet, right, it was an information revolution, information that was only accessible very hard. Go to a library or go to Encyclopedia Britannica and things like that, or to go to a store to buy a thing. Everything suddenly became very accessible. What you are saying is the same thing might happen with knowledge, which was kind of stored in these experts and professionals and limited access or premium access might suddenly become democratized. And
Hmm.
everyone will have access. So if you have an LLM, you have knowledge, you have a doctor, you have a lawyer, you have a teacher, and
Yeah,
that can have profound impact on society and economy. So
totally. Like the example you used, a doctor. Like today, if you wanted to go see a doctor, you go to a doctor. They refer you to a specialist. The specialist may or may not know what's happening. You may need to meet a few specialists. But what if all of the specialties were all shared by the one LLM? They didn't need to refer you because they had the knowledge base of every specialist. Like
true.
you don't have that doctor who's a specialist in every field of medicine, but you could. And then you have a doctor who's sort of um, got their set of experiences. And so maybe an experienced doctor has seen 10,000 patients, but imagine if the LLM has got access to every patient seen by every like an entire hospital system, like just the amount of experience that can get accumulated. I think there's just so much of change that we may not yet have sort of understood how large it could be.
Yeah, we cannot comprehend because we're so used to that knowledge silos, right? Meaning we
Mhm.
cannot comprehend. It maybe in the 60s, 70s, or even 80s when the internet was coming, nobody would have comprehended how 2025 will look with cell phones and access and everything on the cloud and stuff like that. So it's kind of similar. So folks who can capitalize and build businesses on that,
Yeah.
we'll make a lot of money. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's on the agentic stuff, but there's also, I mean, if you think of it, there's now no thinking game that humans can beat a computer on.
Say that again. No
There's
thing.
no thinking game. Like humans can not win against a computer in chess,
Okay.
not
Yeah.
win in Go. Computers have got so good at thinking that they're generally going to be superior to us if they aren't already.
Right.
And the acceleration that you can get in development might be something that we don't understand. Like we may not be the most intelligent species at some point in time.
Yeah.
And we may not be able to comprehend how quickly stuff can change.
Yeah, no, I've written about that and the whole. I think the AGI debate's a little academic, but are we AI or biological intelligence and artificial intelligence, especially when they fuse? Today, the interface is more conversation and things like that, but
Mhm.
if they are more neurologically connected, if you will, to the cortex or even to the limbic, I've kind of talked about that as a leap, evolutionary leap, so to speak. And yeah, I think you're saying some, not exactly that, but something like that, that is bound to happen. How and when is the question, and how humanity kind of adjusts to it, so to speak.
Yeah.
So we live in interesting times. I think that's how. But this was fascinating, Ram. Thanks for. I know it's a little less related to EarnIn and your business, but it is the flavor of the day: AI, AGI, ASI, and artificial superintelligence, and it's of interest to governments and national security and everything. So I would love to go on and talk more philosophically like that, like this with you, Ram, but we have to kind of come to a wrap given the time. So in closing, I'd like to ask you, who are you looking to connect? Meaning, I know you're expanding, getting more customers, and how can people reach you? If you want to give out social media and that kind of handles, are you looking to hire? Are you looking to partner? If you want to give out any of that information.
Yeah, sure. I mean, so the first thing I think is like for people who want to be able to manage their money better, I think we have a lot of products, and all of this is on our website, earnin.com, or you can download our apps. I think also interesting for employers who want to give their employees a better experience with how they receive their pay. We can help with that as well. And I think with the early pay product, we can also actually help banks and credit unions with some of the neobanks that are offering early pay. And we can now make early pay work for their customers while they keep the banking relationship. And so I think it might be interesting for banks and credit unions. And also for people who are just interested in doing fun, interesting, challenging work. We have a lot of open positions at EarnIn, and you can again go to our website and see what all is open.
Right? That's earnin.com. But Ram, this has been a super insightful conversation. A big thank you to you, Mike and Madeline, for sharing their experiences. And audience, if you are listening and want to learn more about how EarnIn and Early Pay can help you, visit earnin.com, www.earnin.com. And you can connect with Ram on LinkedIn, look at their open positions. And definitely, if you're looking to managing your cash flow better, check the app out. It's available on all the popular app stores. Until next time, stay inspired and always be in the know. Thank you, Ram, for being on the FinTech Talk Show.
Thank you, Patty.